All right, it is 5:30. I'll call this policy committee meeting to order. Mrs. Schopp, may I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Greg Schneider,
Present.
Megan Miller is unable to make it this evening, and Amy Levy.
Here.
All members are present except Megan Miller.
Thank you so much. Is there a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
So moved.
I'll provide a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes unanimously. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from our December meeting?
So moved.
Second, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that motion passes unanimously as well. Just to give everyone a heads up, as we move through policy this evening, Board Member Tia Johnson did submit some questions, so please bear with me. I have a couple screens open. Just want to make sure that everyone's input is included. And to the administration, I'll just ask the questions as I received them. All right, so that brings us to policy 171. Before we entertain any motions for this set, we will review 171, 171.1, and 171.2. Starting with policy 171, Board Member Schneider, do you have any questions or comments?
I guess the only comment I have is that I apologize. I was not aware that I was to serve as the timekeeper. I will do that from this point on. Other than that, I have no concerns with this.
You are forgiven. We used to use this policy pretty regularly. It has fallen by the wayside. But in 2024, I am in favor of bringing utilization of this policy back. If you don't have it in front of you, I believe what Board Member Schneider is referring to is item A, regular board meetings will be limited to 2 hours plus any approved half-hour extensions. So yes, I'm a fan. I didn't have any edits for 171 either. So we will move to policy 171.1, notification of board meetings. Board Member Schneider, same question.
No concerns with this policy.
Okay. I would like to offer a slight change. In the last sentence, it says the superintendent secretary shall be responsible for notifying the official newspaper of all meetings and for providing meeting notices to board members. Now, we are in a position where the superintendent's secretary is also the board secretary, but if that's ever not the case, I think that should be the responsibility of the board secretary. Does anyone feel differently?
No.
Okay. Mrs. Schopp,
Pardon me?
Yep.
I do.
Okay, I'm listening.
So, the board secretary years ago was an administrator, and then at a time I pitched to the board to be the board secretary. So, the board secretary role, really, unless otherwise stated by policy, which if you want to change this, you can. But really, my role as the board secretary is really only to come to the meetings, take the minutes, and produce the minutes. But producing the minutes also is my role as the superintendent secretary or admin assistant. All of the other things about getting board packets ready, sending out the agendas to the media, and all of that has always been the superintendent secretary admin assistant role from day one, 22 years ago when I moved into the superintendent's office. So I'm not saying you can't change it, I'm just saying that's always been a role of the superintendent secretary all those years. If you want to change it, fine, I just wanted to give you a little history.
No, I appreciate that. Dr. Garrison, do you have any input?
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle, for sharing that. I honestly didn't think.
Your mic.
It's on. Sorry. Thank you, Michelle, for sharing that. I honestly wasn't thinking about it from that perspective because I do have other, in this case, Mrs. Dooley could also do this. And so I can see it from that perspective as well. So again, I actually agree with Mrs. Schopp. to leaving it like.
If we change this, we would need to change the job description because that is on the job description for the superintendent secretary, that they handle this as it reads in policy.
Okay, I'm processing. I think it would be good for now to put the superintendent or board secretary, because that covers both bases. But I think it may be worth exploring the roles of the superintendent's administrator, administrative assistant, the role of the board secretary, because I think that should be something that the board secretary would do. So I think that we should maybe explore that further. But for now, to include both covers all of our bases. Is anyone opposed to that? All right, so let's make that minor adjustment. Thank you for that additional information, everyone. So that brings us to policy 171.2, which is why, in full transparency, these three policies are on the agenda for this evening. As I was reviewing this policy, I'll just read the sentence and then offer an explanation. I'm starting with the second sentence of this policy. Any board member, citizen, or staff member wishing to place an item on the agenda should contact the superintendent or board president at least 7 days prior to the meeting with his/her their request. And then initially it went down to a copy of the agenda. So my point is, it never said what happens to the request. It leaves it in limbo. So if the board president and/or superintendent approve it, then it goes on the agenda. If either of those two persons do not approve it, then nothing happens. So that is why I wrote the information that's captured in green. And I'm sure everyone has reviewed it, so I won't read it verbatim. But for anyone who's watching, it just basically says what happens to the request. If the request is not approved, it will go on the next regular or special agenda. And if it's denied, then it'll have a reason for denial. And at that point, any member of the board can make a motion to have that agenda item added to the next meeting, and that would happen with a simple majority vote. So that is the context behind this addition. Board Member Schneider, do you have any questions or edits for policy 171.2?
I have several.
Okay.
Number one, if we even considered looking at the agenda request, we need to make sure that those items that we would consider are those that are the responsibility of the board and not the day-to-day operations of the district. But I think we also need to trust the board president and with the superintendent's assistance to make good decisions. And if policies are denied, I think that's fine that we notify people of that. I'm not in favor of having them added to an agenda item. It lengthens the agendas. And if the items haven't been approved by the board president, our meetings are long enough, and to make anything that anybody requests an option for board meetings, I think would just extend those our meetings too long, and add too many extra meetings in order to accommodate all of those things. So I don't like the idea of having them appear on the agenda. I have no problem that if those items that are denied are sent to board members on a confidential manner, that we can look at those. But I don't think we want them specifically on the agenda.
May I ask a question? Mm-hmm. So if an item is sent to a board member, what do you mean by we could look at it? Because it would have to be an agenda item for us to look at it, unless you're using that phrase differently than I think.
Okay. If we place items that were requested to be put on the agenda and denied, and those are on the agenda, then any board member can then take those and add them to the following meeting.
Well, that's what this says.
Right.
Yeah.
But that is going to then push other things off to a later time. And I think some of the requests are not in the purview of the Board of Education to make those decisions. So we don't want to continue to add to the length of our meetings with items that are not our responsibility to handle.
So let me describe what I wrote and provide additional context. So if an item was denied, it could in theory appear like where we have next meeting date, denied agenda items. And it will be listed, it'll have the reason for denial. If a board member deemed that is something that should be considered by the board, only then would they make the motion and then the board would vote. So theoretically, unless there's a lot of discussion around it, that could take a couple minutes. Now, what you're describing, that if someone came to a board member with an item, the only way we could look at that is if it was on the agenda like I'm describing.
Correct.
So it sounds like you are both in favor of and opposed to this.
I am opposed to placing it on the agenda. If the Board of Education, as a board, is notified that there is a policy or a request for an agenda item that has been denied, the board member then has the opportunity to request it to be looked at again with the reason why it should be looked at.
So let me give additional context. The genesis of this is that I emailed our board president and our superintendent with a request for an agenda item. And it wasn't denied or approved. I believe the language from Dr. Garrison was, we're still deciding if that should be an agenda item. So it's in limbo. So that is why I wrote this, because the only way to address it is if there is a clear pathway to get an agenda item, a proposed agenda on the agenda, so the board can vote, yes, this is something we want to hear about, or if it's not, then no motion needs to be made. Dr. Garrison, would you like to add anything?
So thank you for adding the comments. One of the things that comes with this responsibility is it's a lot of planning that comes with setting a board agenda. And when you're thinking about a board agenda, it's not like a 1 week to week type of conversation. Sometimes it's a month to month conversation, or even pre-planned even further out. I think based off of sometimes of the needs of a school district and what we're actually working through, the board president and the superintendent works very closely to make an agenda that we believe will be items in which the board can actually vote on and or the board needs to actually act on or even hear about. As it pertains to like certain requests, whether it comes from a board member or a constituent in the community, these requests could be many. And once we get to that whole mini conversation, this could fall differently when we get into the reasons why things are denied in public as well. And so for me, I agree with Mr. Schneider from the aspect of these items shouldn't be placed on an agenda when we deny them, to be possibly brought back for additional discussion, knowing what we also have on our docket from a month-to-month basis. So oftentimes when we're setting the agenda, one looks at not just what we're working on right now, but what we did in the past and in previous years, because some things are like reoccurring. It just takes up a lot of time to dictate and to determine each individual board member's possible thought to come back to a board meeting for a possible additional agenda item. Now, I will say that some of these conversations can happen offline as to why we are denying certain conversations, and or we can have more further discussions about whatever topic that one wants to see at the board level and or individual board concerns. And so that's another option that I'm very open to, of course, having with any board member and or citizen, to say the least. Now, again, I have had some opportunities where people have asked for certain things to be put on the board agenda, and naturally, sometimes, again, those things are not able to move forward with. However, it's always done in the aspect of what is actually happening and what we need for our school district. The board president and the school superintendent has to be able to work in collaboration to really set the direction in which we're trying to, of course, move forward with. And again, there's topics and there's themes that pop up that we may have to, move away from that we already had planned to talk about just to add because of, certain situations that happens in the district. And a lot of those things happened last year when I first got here as well. So there's a big cadence that comes with what gets on the agendas, and the timing of it is just as important. And I don't want to make this one of those things where we are getting into multiple requests coming from multiple people, and then we having at a board conversation why they're denied and or brought back up, voted on. I think the leadership of the board president and my role as a superintendent is something that we need to keep intact. Now, we should give you a reason as to a denial, Board Member Levy, but that can happen individually, not necessarily at the full board.
Thank you so much for providing that additional context. So a few remarks. One, over your past year of service with the district, how many requests for agenda items from board members, citizens, or staff members, and you can ballpark it, have you received?
If I had to ballpark it, maybe 4.
Okay, I don't think that's an overwhelming number considering this policy has been around since it looks like 1991. I think it's irresponsible to have in policy that someone can make a request and not also have contained in that same policy what the resolution of that request is. And I find it odd to hear this evening that I could be given a reason why my request was denied. If it was denied, I don't know. I don't know why that wouldn't have been handled in the email that I submitted.
And I don't want to make this a public, necessarily a public conversation at this point, but
Well, it is.
Sure. But I also want to make sure that I speak with the board president, and we have a nice collaboration around how we are to respond to anybody's request. And so in absence of that happening, that's probably why you haven't received a response.
So again, I'm surprised why that wouldn't happen when, again, I made the request in writing. And also, I made edits to the policy. So I'm certain that you reviewed the policy in your preparation for this evening. So I'm unclear why you and the board president wouldn't have had a conversation around how you would like this handled. Board Member Schneider, so hearing all of the context, do you still believe that it is okay to have that you can make a request, but there is no measure for handling or how the request is handled or if the request is responded to in policy? Are you fine with that?
I think we should include how the request is going to be handled. I like the idea that you put in that you're going to get approval or denial within 5 business days of the request. I don't want to let things just happen and then nobody ever hears about it. We need to have a timeline that goes with that. So I agree that part should be in there.
Okay.
My concern is actually placing the items on the agenda would be my concern.
Okay. Would you be comfortable with editing the proposed addition to all denied agenda items requested by a board member? And I just think there's a level of respect that is being overlooked. If an elected or appointed board member feels strongly that an item should be placed on the agenda and that is denied, then I think we have earned the right to have that reviewed by our colleagues. And if 4 of us feel strongly, it'll appear on the next agenda. And if we don't, then it won't.
Can I add something?
Absolutely.
Sure. One of the things that I think that's probably missing in this conversation is, it's not the goal of the board president. I can't speak for what, not the goal of myself, of course, superintendent, to not give a response to why we're denying certain actions. A lot of things did happen and transpire even last month, and that could have played into different reasons of why we didn't respond to your request. However, I do see the need to at least give you not just you, anyone, a reason for the denial. I do not. I do agree with Board Member Schneider that bringing it to the board level for a vote to go on to the regular agenda or special agenda at the next meeting could be very problematic, because again, there's themes that we are having to address and look at, and getting that added to a board agenda in a timely manner, researched. I just think that that adds to the conversation. Now, although there's, again, ballparking 4 or so requests that I've gotten in the past year, this could open up a door for many, many more.
How would it open up the door if it's already established in policy? And I'm certain you read this during your review for this evening, but I just want to bring note to the item will be placed on the next regular or special meeting agenda with a simple majority vote in favor of the item. The Board of Education recognizes that some agenda items will require research to complete the agenda-related documentation. Agenda items approved by the Board of Education and requesting research shall appear on a regular or special meeting agenda as soon as possible. So that language does make accommodations that if more goes in to getting this item on the agenda, that's complete, that happens, it's completely expected, and allowances are made for that.
Sure. I also think from a board member's perspective, you may send something that we need to address, but then you add citizens to this.
Well, I didn't add citizens.
Oh,
Citizens have
correct.
been on this policy since 1991.
But when we add the provision of citizens now being able to have this same type of,
And I'm interrupting
Commentary.
you, but definitely not to be disrespectful. That's not being added. That is already in the policy.
I should say the green area, when we're saying that this could be brought back to the regular board member for a simple board vote, citizens' information now or citizens' request could open up the door for many, many more requests to come to the table.
I respectfully disagree, but Board Member Schneider, would you be comfortable with changing the language in the second sentence of the green proposed addition? All denied agenda items requested by board members shall be listed on the agenda for the next board meeting.
I am okay with that.
Okay. Ms. Shope, could you make that adjustment? So the green information, the proposed addition will remain in place. What you wrote me, the note about the typo where there was a missing W, I believe you said you already added that. But in the second sentence, it would change to all denied agenda items requested by board members shall be listed on the agenda of the next, the same as it lists with just that edit.
Okay.
Thank you all for this
Okay.
robust, did you have anything else, Board Member
Excellent.
Schneider?
I would like to change the fact that the next regular or special board meeting be changed to that sentence so that any board member who wants an appropriate item to appear on the agenda of a committee or board meeting shall.
Perfect, I
So
love
that's
that.
not- Because
Yep.
we use the committee
Structure,
structure
yep.
to do it. So it may be the most appropriate place to do it there. And I would remove the word next. I mean, we're already saying that we want to do it as quickly as possible, but some things may take extension. But if the next meeting is already full and it's a long night, it may be appropriate to wait till the following meeting in order to place it on there, or that it goes to committee the next time through. So there needs to be some way that we don't have to absolutely do it the next meeting,
Yep.
but we can put a limit within the next 2 months or the next whatever. So we have some flexibility to stay on focus with where we need to be.
How about this? And I appreciate that context. One, could you point out where we should add committee meetings, just to make sure that we have that accurately captured?
Okay, I think this is the third sentence that says, any board member who wants the item to appear on the next, and I would take out on the, to appear on the agenda of a committee or board meeting shall.
Okay. So, Ms. Shope, did you get where committee needs to go? I would submit that we put next or following,
Okay,
and then we have the clause at the bottom. Like if a board member requests something and it's denied and it takes time to research, we have that captured at the bottom as soon as possible.
Right.
And I totally, once it's approved, we know it's going to appear. Once that happens, I don't think either the superintendent or the board president, whoever is serving in those roles, would slow walk it or would
Right.
push it off. So are you fine with next or following?
Yes.
And okay. Ms. Shope, did you get all that? Okay.
So for clarification.
Yep.
The bottom portion of the agenda items approved by the Board of Education requiring research, so that stays.
Absolutely.
Okay, and so, but the question I have before there is that the simple board vote piece.
A
Board-
simple majority vote.
Correct. I still disagree with that becoming a board vote. I'm not,
So
I'm just trying to
yeah, but
figure
here's
out
the thing, and the only way if
if it was denied.
hold on, let me finish my thought because I think this might clear this up. Now, this was not a change in policy, but currently a board member, a citizen, or a staff member can make a recommendation for an agenda item. It is either approved or denied by the board president and superintendent. If it is denied, according to this edition, you're going to let them know within 5 days, hey, this was denied, and tell them why. If it is a board member making that request and it is denied, then it appears on an agenda item, but only request for agenda items that are made by board members that are denied by the president and superintendent, only those would appear on an agenda item. And if, let's just say it's me, okay? So Amy's recommendation appears on the agenda and no one else thinks it should be taken up but Amy, then we move right along. If someone feels, or I could make the motion, if it doesn't get a second, because not one other person is interested, then we move on. If it gets a second, then we have a simple vote. And when the voting structure of our board is, things pass with a simple majority, unless in certain cases, it takes a 3/4 vote. I don't think this should have to be a 3/4 vote to get an agenda item requested by a board member. So I think that should be a simple majority vote. You disagree?
I think that's based off of this, again, if there's one board member's request being denied, we have 7 board members. And so then and I'm just being honest with you, once we
Yeah.
open up this door, your one request is one thing, then we have 7 other board members whose request could be another thing. And now we're taking up multiple votes.
How many
set it-
board
to set it
members
then.
since you've been here have made requests for agenda items?
Again, this wasn't a part of the request at the time, so this is a new request. I'm saying it could
What do
open
you-
up that door.
No. The ability to make a request has been present since 1991.
Correct.
But it doesn't say how it's resolved, and that's what I'm seeking to rectify through policy. So I didn't make up the wording for board member, citizen, staff member. Those categories could have always made a request. So my question is, how many board members over your past year have made requests for agenda items to appear on an upcoming agenda?
Only you, I think.
So that's one, but so is your argument that this could open the floodgates and now board members are going to start making copious amounts of requests?
It could very possibly be. I mean, because based off of a board member's individual thing or something they want to address could also pop up in conversation now. Before it was not part of the conversation. Now we're making it a part of the conversation.
Dr. Garrison, I don't know how else to say this. I didn't rewrite the first part of the policy. Board members could always make requests.
You need to hear what I'm saying.
Okay.
Sure. I'm saying that now that this is being added, this conversation now is being added because this is new. The green part is new.
Absolutely.
Now that this is being added, this could open up more requests because before it wasn't there. The green part wasn't there before. So
Okay.
I completely understand the citizens, the board members, and staff members could ask, to have stuff identified. That was a simple denial, and we moved on. Now, you were saying that the board members and of course the board members, of course, can be denied. It be brought back to an agenda item and voted on. That's the new stuff.
Absolutely.
Right. And I'm saying that that could open up the door because now this is a new thing. The green stuff is a new thing.
The green stuff is new. Thank you so much. Did you have anything else, Board Member Schneider?
I think to add somewhere add a statement that the items that the board can vote on in a whole are items that are the responsibility of the board. So that we're not getting into, okay, we want to challenge, and I'm just making something up,
Yep.
challenge a new curriculum or challenge a course or challenge something. It has to be something that's actually in the purview of the Board of Education to deal with.
So what I would say to that is the board does approve curriculum. So, and of course we can look for different scenarios. I trust my colleagues, and I don't think 4 of us would vote to have an agenda item added to an agenda that wasn't in the purview of the board. Do you feel differently that 4 of us may add something that was outside of our purview to an agenda item?
I think that could easily happen if the dynamics of the board and who is on the board changes.
Well, the good thing
You
about
know,
it is
we're
it's the
doing this
first
for any board that sits,
Absolutely.
not for the current board.
Absolutely.
The good thing about it is it's the first reading. And, we can also have additional conversations in the next reading.
Well, and I think that's a little misleading at the committee level because unless there's a reason for something to be held over, everything is a first meeting and then it goes on to the full board. Now, once it goes to the full board, there's a first and second required reading there unless that's suspended for some reason. But it stays in committee until it's done, whether that's a first reading, a 7th reading, it stays here until it's done.
The other thing that comes
Yep.
in is that I know the request comes in 7 days before the meeting. They have to respond within 5 days of the request. But in the second paragraph, it says the board secretary by noon 6 days prior. So if the request comes in a week in advance, they respond
Then
5
it wouldn't be
days.
eligible for that next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're not going to violate our own policy
Right.
with the request. It wouldn't be eligible
Right.
for that agenda.
Right.
Yep.
And this is another space where I would change that to committee or board meeting.
Oh, please tell us where so we can make sure we have that.
Again, second paragraph, the second line, it says board secretary by noon 6 days prior to it says regular or special board meeting. That
Right.
should be to the committee and board meeting.
So,
Special or regular, they're both board meetings. So we don't need to separate them off, but we need to include committee with that.
okay, so are you saying drop special?
Yep.
Or add committee?
I'm saying add committee and drop special board meeting.
Okay, and then could we have that same word, just to make sure we're consistent, above? So prior to the regular or committee meeting.
Right.
Perfect. All right, Ms. Shope, did you get that?
And
All
it's
right.
also the same thing, 2 lines down.
Okay, just make sure we're consistent with that language instead of regular or special, that it's regular or committee. Well, this has been robust. I appreciate this. All right. Is there a motion to approve policies 171, 171.1, and 171.2 to the full board for first reading?
Point of order.
Yes?
You don't need to do 171. You made no
Or were there no
revisions.
changes to 171? Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, I have to ask this question. Mr. Snyder's question around the approval of the agendas within board. I'm not sure how you stated it, Mr. Schneider, but approve the agendas within board responsibility or action.
Board, responsibility.
Is that being added or
I would like that added.
Okay, you would like that added where and what are the?
I would think I believe it's the third sentence, in the green area in the first paragraph that starts with any board member who wants an item to appear, I think it would be that sentence that we would add it. Let's see, to appear, that is the responsibility of the board? Or maybe,
May I ask a clarifying question? What do you believe is not the responsibility of the board? Because I think hearing that may help us shape the language for how this should read.
the board is not responsible for the day-to-day operation of the school district. Is not directly responsible for.
So here's my only concern with, and I don't agree with the premise,
Okay.
but curriculum is a part of the day-to-day responsibility. But curriculum is something that the board approves. So see how there's that multi-layered of, and I get we're not just writing policy for the current board that's seated, but we're writing policy for all boards. And I
Right.
believe your intent is to protect against abuse.
Correct.
If you had a board that would abuse, you also have a board, you can suspend any policy or any portion of policy you like.
That's true.
You know what I mean? So I'm just having a hard time. It's not that I'm against that. I just don't know how that would be worded, because
Right.
even things that are day-to-day operation of the board holistically fall under the purview when it comes to board approval.
That's where I think that's where, you know, we as a team, we act, you know, more together, and those lines could easily be. Again, my hopes is that if we are bringing a curriculum that we truly believe is going to help move our district forward, that it would be approved by the board. I would hope that. We wouldn't bring a curriculum to you all that we don't think would, you know, again, you know, move our school district forward. So I can understand what you're stating, Mrs. Levy, but I'm also.
Sorry, that was
That's
loud.
okay. But I just want to make sure people understand that this is teamwork that makes this delineation work.
I absolutely agree it's teamwork, and it also should have been teamwork when I made a request and the request wasn't approved or denied. I was just given some line of, we haven't decided what agenda item is going to go. So that's when you turn to policy to make things clear so everyone knows what to expect. So Board Member Schneider, do you have language that you would like added? And it could be that it moves on to the full board, and you are absolutely welcome to bring up this point then, because it may be that 7 heads are better than 2, and our colleagues could assist in coming up with language that could hopefully address your concern.
I'm okay with doing that, and I'll have wording for the next board
Perfect.
meeting.
All right, I think that's awesome. Ms. Shook, do you have any questions about what our edits are? All right, so the motion still remains, the request for a motion to approve policy 171.1 and 171.2 to the full board for their consideration.
So moved.
Second, is there any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone, again, for that robust conversation. All right, next up, we have policy 411. Again, we will review, before we receive a motion, policies 411 and 411.1. And Dr. Garrison, these were on the agenda for our December discussion. So before I open the floor for any additional edits, does the administration have any new information to share on 411? Or we'll just take both of them since this isn't a first time we're reviewing it, 411 or 411.1.
I can refer to, Dee just stepped out. I don't think we had any additional changes, but I did have Mrs. Almendarez here to help address some of the conversation. But in case you all had any questions, and by the time she comes back, if there's something that we need to change.
Well, no, it's my understanding that the reason this was coming back, because one of my concerns with policy 411, it talks about the complaint process, and a complaint can be written or verbal, and that complaint is given to a staff member who makes sure it gets to the CO. Everything is outlined there. But my main question, which I believe was the reason for the holdover, is complaints end up in writing. They may start that way, but they might not. It might be a verbal. But complaints end up in writing. Does it matter who fills out the complaint form? And if it's different than the complainant, is there a sign-off to ensure that the complaint is accurate? Like, yep, that's how I described it to you. That was my intent. So that was the reason it was being held over, because we didn't have that information in December. I'm hopeful that we now have that information.
There are different ways that the complaints can come to the district, and as such, it could come in the form of a referral from an administrator. It could come from a parent whose child told them about a situation. And so we have the complaint form that we use out front here at KEC that can be utilized and signed by the parent. So where I'm struggling with your inquiry, and I think, hold on a second, Missy, is just determining what you mean by somebody else. So I'm going to pass it on to Missy.
Sure, thank you.
The forms that she's referring to do not have a spot to say, yes, I, student, confirm what my parent is writing.
Okay.
So the reason we paused in December was so the administration could find out, one, if that was the case, and if you all believe that that was an appropriate thing to have for accuracy. You may be someone for which English is not their first language and things need to be translated. And if someone else is documenting your account, I would hope that there is a step where there's a review. Did I get this right? Is this what you intended? And then they say, yep, and sign off on it. So if I'm understanding you correctly, that is not the case.
There's not a space on any of the forms that are used. However, every single form is investigated or looked into. And so the students, the victim, and the suspects are spoken to by a district staff member.
Okay, so my concern is just to making sure that the complaint, the point of origin for the investigation is accurate, especially if I'm telling Greg something and Greg's documenting it for me. So again, my question is, and does the administration believes that it is an appropriate idea to make sure the thing that kicks off the investigation is, yep, this is what I intended, this is accurate, if that form is not being completed by the complainant? That was the whole reason for the holdover.
I think the way we have it is the way we feel it is appropriate.
Dr. Garrison, you
I
agree?
actually agree with that. Since I've been here, all of our, like I mentioned last, all of our complaints are looked into, and the process, from my understanding, is working. I haven't had any complaints that it's not working. So I think the process we have in place is correct. The reason why I did ask Missy and Dee Dee to come back to this conversation again was I wanted to make sure that when we take in the complaint, I just want to make sure I'm clear as well. When we take in the complaint, that it's received, we follow through based off of the policy. I just want to make sure we're capturing what the board is looking for, because I think right now what we have is working. That's just where I'm at right now.
Okay, I just wish that would have been made clear in December, and we would have had 2 less items on this agenda. It was my understanding that this is something that the administration wanted to explore when we had that conversation, but it seems like your position is we're good.
So I think
Is that accurate?
That's correct. What I was confused about, though, I think was the sign-off piece. That's what I was unsure about in December.
When you say confused, what do you mean?
Like who received it? Not only who received it, but when we receive it, is it in writing? Is it verbal? Do we have all the context of the concern? I was also confused. I'll be honest with you, I didn't know that our complaint forms could also be housed inside buildings as well. So there was information that I just didn't know that I wanted to go back and look into.
Okay, perfect. So just for the record, and everyone's on the same page, a complaint can be filled out by someone other than the original complainant, and there is no kind of check to make sure that the complainant is in agreement with what is contained in that form, and the administration is okay with that.
Yes, we take anonymous complaints, we take formal complaints, we take informal complaints.
Okay, thank you so much. Is there a motion to move policy 411 and 411.1? I got ahead of myself. Board Member Johnson has questions. I'm just going to give these exactly as she gave them to me and allow the administration to answer. The first of 4 is, what are the process procedure teachers/instructors are to follow when a student harasses another student? I believe that's already outlined in policy. Is that accurate? All right. Number 2, when new employees/teachers are hired, are they given work time to learn the code of conduct and board policies? They are given work time to do that?
There's policies that we have to review at the beginning of the school year. Harassment is one of them. So when we say work time, we ask that they have them, that they clear them during the time that they're at work. But sometimes we have to allot time for them to make sure they're reviewing these policies as well.
Okay, and just because the board member took time to write this, I'm going to read these for the record. What are the principals doing once an issue of harassment comes to their attention? I think that is outlined in the policy. And then her final question is, who/which position served as the complaint officer? That is also included. Now this is new, is it part of the employment job description/expectation? And then second to that, do or will the COs receive addendum pay for this role?
We don't receive addendum pays to follow through with a complaint, no.
So I think her major question is that a part of the complaint officer's job description?
That you're the Title IX coordinator, would that be in your job description?
Yes, that would be in the Title IX coordinator's job description.
Perfect. So those have been addressed. Is there a motion to approve policy 411 and 411.1 to the full board for consideration?
So moved.
Second, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, that motion passes unanimously. That brings us to policy 451, which is a standalone. So if we need to, we can go ahead and move that on to the full board. Give me 1 second. So policy 451, student insurance. Board Member Schneider, any questions or edits?
I have nothing.
All right. I just have a slight shift. I think for me, it would make more sense if we moved the second sentence and made it the first, because this is the way it currently reads. It says the school district of Beloit may make available a student insurance program. And then it says students are expected to provide their own insurance for school coverage, and then it goes to talk about the program. So if we start, since a program may or may not exist, this policy just says that this is something the district might do. I think to start with the thing that is expected and then go into the things that should happen. So Ms. Shope, I'm going to read it and you let me know if you need anything repeated. This is just what I'm proposing for feedback. Students are expected to provide their own insurance. The school district of Beloit may make available at no cost to the district a student insurance program. So I just collapsed those two sentences because I am all for streamline. And then the executive director of pupil services will provide to parents or guardians information on student insurance if such insurance is available. Does anyone object to that reading? And then I do have one question. When it says students are expected to provide their own insurance, I left off for school coverage. Is there something that I am just ignorant to? Like, is there a special coverage for school that you, like a student who's in school has?
Not that I am aware of. I think it reads just fine the way you
Okay.
stated it.
Does anyone object? Final call.
No, I don't. Shouldn't it say parents are? It says students are expected to provide their own insurance. Should it say parents?
I don't have a problem with that. Parents/guardians.
Yeah, parents are.
Or adults, I mean, it might be an adult students.
Would guardians catch that? Because I know there's different words have different meanings.
I mean, sure.
Okay.
Students, caregivers, guardians, adult students.
So Ms. Shope, I'll read it once more again, and then just stop if you need me to repeat anything. Parents/guardians are expected to provide insurance for students. Okay. The school district of Beloit may make available at no cost to the district a student insurance program. The executive director of pupil services will provide to parents or guardians information on student insurance if such insurance is available. Ms. Shope, do you need me to?
I need at least one
Yep.
clarification.
Absolutely.
And maybe two.
I'm
So
listening.
My first question is, the sentence that is the third sentence, where it says the program will be conducted at blah, blah, blah,
Yep.
is that being deleted?
Yeah, because I combined it, because right
Okay.
now it says the students of Beloit, the program will be conducted at no expense to the district.
Right.
I combined it and said the school district of Beloit may make available at no cost to the district a student insurance program.
Okay.
And again, we'll start with parents/guardians are expected. And then Dr. Garrison would like to add the executive director of pupil services or designee will provide to parents or guardians. No problem. We good?
One more time from the top, please,
Oh,
so I can make sure I have
absolutely.
it all.
Parents or guardians are expected to provide insurance for students. The school district of Beloit may make available at no cost to the district a student insurance program. The executive director of pupil services or designee will provide to parents or guardians information on student insurance if such insurance is available.
I think I'm good.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Is there a motion to move policy 451 to the full board for consideration?
So moved.
I'll provide a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, that brings us to policy 453. We will review 453 and 453 Rule 1 before we entertain a motion. And to keep with our recent practice, are there any objections before we start the review to merge the rule into the policy? Board Member Schneider, do you object to that?
I know the Rule 1 is recommended to retire that.
Oh, thank you so much. I actually have a note. Dr. Garrison, this question is for you. So everything is crossed out for those following along at home. So my note is the administration recommending that the information contained in policy 453 Rule 1 be removed from the policy and placed in administrative regulation? So let me just pause there. Is that the intent?
I think my team is here, so the intent for me is, I don't think we need this information anymore because the 453 does it for us with the legal and the cross references. But Ms. Babilius can.
A lot of this was already put into different policies that some of them we're gonna be going through as well.
This
But
evening,
Yeah,
or-
so there are duplications of a lot of where they're on more specific ones. Like there's stuff about here like about immunization. So in the immunization policy, it talks about like duties and stuff of different staff. And then there's different stuff on here that like is in the emergency policy that delineates like what responsibilities different people have. So again, most of these were duplications of what's already in different policies.
It actually looks to me that this information isn't the same from the student immunization.
No, I'm saying they're spread out across different policies. Like there's some in the vision one, there's some in the immunization one, there's some in the emergency nursing service one, so they're spread out. Oh.
So what I would recommend is actually moving, because it's not lengthy at all. This would make it a 1.5-page policy. And we do have certain policies that have minor parts that are duplication. But if we have a policy, well, not if, since we have a policy for a school health program, I think that is the place to go over the responsibilities for the principal and for the nurse and for staff. So I would actually be in favor, and Board Member Schneider, I'd love to hear your feedback of, as we have done in the recent past, move the information from this rule and collapse it into the policy. Do you have any objection to that?
I have no objection to that.
Okay. So yeah, I think that we should go with that. And I do have a question as we're looking at policy 453. So it says the Board of Education recognizes there's a connection between health and academic achievement. No, please forgive me. Bullet point 1. Take into consideration the health needs of the community and provide for the physical, mental, and emotional health of students. My question is, what does the health needs of the community mean?
It means whatever we might have going on. So if there's an outbreak of some kind of illness, disease, or if there's something going on in the community that is like of high nature, say there is a death of a student or something significant, then we would address that and provide services to students when there's like a significant health need. I don't know.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification. All right, so Ms. Shope, it looks like we will be retiring policy 453, Rule 1, and collapsing that collapsing that information into policy 453. Excuse me. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Oh, way to jump in, Board Member Schneider. Is there a motion to move policy 453 with edits onto the full board for consideration?
So moved.
Second, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes unanimously.
You can pause and I can put it in a joke for a second here.
No, especially if it's a dad joke. No, I will suffer through.
So,
All right, Dr. Garrison, take it away.
so dad joke of the moment. No, I don't want to use that one. I was going to say what.
Thank you for self-censoring.
Self-censoring. I pause. I have to digress, and I will move back to the board.
No joke?
No joke.
You don't have a backup?
Because I don't have a backup for the one I was going to say. And I had to on the spot say, no, I can't say that publicly.
Thank you for self-censoring. All right, I think I have recovered. All right, that brings us to policy 453.1. Is anyone opposed to merging Rule 1 into policy 453.1? Let's start there.
No.
Okay, perfect. With that being said, I'll offer this and then I'll yield the floor, Board Member Schneider. Since we are merging the rule into the policy, for me, it read better to start with the first paragraph, so everything above A, in policy 453 rule 1 because it talks about the school district staff shall provide emergency services. So that would be the first paragraph in policy 453.1 and then roll into what is presently in policy 453.1. I just think that that reads better and then it goes into A. Does anyone object to that?
No.
All right. Ms. Shope, did you get that? So we're rolling the rule into the policy, and we're going to start the policy with the first paragraph from 453.1 Rule 1, and then continue with the policy that's already there, and then roll right into A. Perfect. You are nodding
Got it.
yes. All right. And again, this is a policy that we reviewed in May of this year, so we'll just look at it in its entirety. Board Member Schneider, do you have any edits to what will now be 453.1, which encompasses Rule 1?
I have no edits.
I don't either. All right. Is there a motion to move policy 453.1 to the full board for consideration with edits and to retire policy 453.1 Rule 1?
So moved.
All right, second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes unanimously. That brings us to policy 453.11, life-sustaining care. Board Member Schneider, do you have any questions or edits?
I have no questions or edits.
Perfect. I just have one quick question, and I'm looking in the fourth paragraph, the green highlighted. My question is, why is the recommended change healthcare provider instead of physician? And for context, just to go back and read that sentence, it says the school district of Beloit may, as its sole discretion, consider requests for alternative forms of life-sustaining emergency care for individual students. Such requests must be supported by written medical substantiation by the individual student's healthcare provider instead of what was physician. Is there a reason for that? Because when I think of healthcare provider, I think insurance.
Okay, because it might not necessarily be a physician. It could be a physician assistant. It could be a nurse practitioner who are also able to write those orders. I don't know why this is doing that, but so it doesn't necessarily need to be a physician by law to be able to write that.
Got it. Thank you for clearing that up. All right. Is there a motion to move on policy 453.11 to the full board for consideration?
So moved.
Second, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes unanimously and brings us to policy 453.12. Again, I am recommending that we roll Rule 1 into the policy. So let's just start there. Are there any objections to that?
No.
All right. That being said, we will look at it its entirety. I'll just do this brief setup and then yield the floor. Since those two policies are becoming one, for me it makes sense. Okay, let me ask this. I would prefer to start with the definitions and get those out of the way so the rest of the policy, it's not you start with the language using the acronyms and then you define them. So I would be in favor of putting the definition portion found in 453.1 to Rule 1 and start that and then roll into what is currently 453.12. Are there any objections to that?
No.
All right. So with that structural change, Board Member Schneider, we will look at what is currently 453.12. Any questions or edits?
I have none.
Okay. I just have one question, and it's at the bottom of paragraph 3. My question is, do district AEDs travel to district and/or community events not held on district property? And the reason I ask is because that next sentence says, if a medical emergency arises on the district grounds or at a district or community event that will require the use of an AED, staff, volunteers, or students who have completed the appropriate, and then they have the training, will use district AEDs. But that's not possible if those AEDs don't travel to the site of the event. Is that our current practice?
So we have talked about that, this year with the athletic director in regards to those events, but no, normally they do not travel with, for different events.
I'm sorry, I missed the first part. When you said for those which events are you
Sorry,
referring
for the
to?
sporting events. I've been talking to the athletic director about making sure that we take them for sporting events that are.
Okay, sporting events, but that is not our current practice.
Correct, yes.
Oh, okay, so we would have to, and there's nothing wrong with doing that, but we need to edit policy because right now it sounds like we're out of compliance. So I would say if a medical emergency arises on district grounds, that would require the use of an AED, and then keep going. So I would propose that we remove "or at a district or community event." Because right now, our AEDs don't travel, so the only place they could be physically used is at an event that's on our school grounds. Anyone opposed to that edit?
What if we remove district AEDs, because some places have an AED, they just might not be ours?
Oh,
I'm fine either way, it's just a suggestion.
I'm thinking through that. So, for a sporting event that's in Janesville, if something occurs, we would be using their AED, right? So we wouldn't be using an AED, but at a community event that happened on our property, we would, right? I think it should say AED because then it's not the expectation that if we're sponsoring an event off-site, if our AEDs are not traveling, we can't set that expectation in policy. So I think it's important to put where it's physically happening. Yeah. All right, Board Member Schneider, any questions or edits for what is currently but will change in policy 453.12, Rule 1?
I have nothing.
Okay. Now, Tia does have some, let me see if I. Okay, I have a question. So I am looking at policy 543.12, Rule 1, under notification of use on the second page, number 2. It says public communication regarding the district's automatic external defibrillator participation will be announced annually by the district's communication and marketing office. So my only question is, when and how does that happen? And the AED participation, is that we have them or that one has been utilized? What does that mean?
So we need to make sure that the community is aware that we have AEDs on our site, not necessarily that we are going to use them,
Okay.
but that we have them on site.
Okay, and that is being currently announced annually in some form or fashion?
It's on our district website.
Okay, so that meets the requirement. Thank you.
Missy, could you move down? I'm sorry, just move. I just that noise is. I'm sorry. No, I think it's probably your computer.
It's you.
No, I think it's your computer probably. I think it's probably your computer interfering with. I think I could be wrong. Can you turn on now? Cause that I'm sorry.
It's not you, it's me.
Trial and error, we'll get it. All right. My next question is under operation, so down a little further. A through H are being, or actually 3A through H and number, well, let's just deal with that, and then I'll go to 4. Is A through H covered somewhere else, and we no longer need it in policy? I'm just wondering why that is proposed for removal.
We have it in our first aid protocol guidelines, which can change, so that's why we took out everything. And then also, there's a little bit, the steps are different based off if you're a healthcare provider, or you're not a healthcare provider. So that's why we took that out.
Okay. I am fine with that. Number 4 currently reads, AEDs may be used on children under the age of 8 only if pediatric accessories are available. Is there a reason that makes perfect sense to me. Is there a reason you want that removed from policy?
Yeah, because that's not accurate. You can use adult pads, you would just use them a little bit different. So you would never not want to use them in an emergency situation when we have the ability, and it's a protocol for the American Red Cross to go ahead and use the pads on a pediatric patient.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification. All right. So Tia's question, and I believe it's answered in policy, but I just want to confirm. Her question is, does School District Beloit pay for employees to receive first aid, CPR, AED, BLS training and certification? And if we look under training, it says all district personnel are eligible to complete an approved training course in the operation of CPR and AED with the approval of the building principal or nurse. The district may recommend staff, and then it says the district will arrange for the designated personnel's initial and follow-up training. So I take the district will arrange for it, is the district is going to take care of it, so cover the cost. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, and we do cover the cost for staff on our MERT team, coaches, building admin to be trained.
Perfect. Now, just for clarification, since it says all district personnel are eligible, is anyone who is interested in receiving the training covered by the district as far as cost?
So no, so they would have to make sure that the principal and nurse approve, for one, to make sure that they need more people on their MERT team, and then two, to make sure that they would be an appropriate candidate to do that as well.
Okay. All right, so hopefully that answers Board Member Johnson's question. And that is all I have for the section. So that'll take us to 450, nope. So is there a motion to approve policy 453.12 for the full board for consideration and to retire policy 453.12 Rule 1?
So moved.
Second, is there any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes unanimously. We are almost there. All right, that brings us to policy 453.2, student immunizations, and we also have policy 453.2, Rule 1. 453.2 is very brief. Are there any objections to rolling Rule 1 into policy 453.2?
No.
All right. That being said, we will look at it in its entirety. Board Member Schneider, do you have any questions or edits for either 453.2 or what is currently listed as Rule 1?
I do not.
Okay. My only very small change is under B of what is now Rule 1. Number 3 seems to me like it should be number 1, and everything else falls under it. Number 3 is follow the Wisconsin student immunization law timeline for action required of schools. Does anyone object to making that the number 1, and then everything that comes under it will be renumbered accordingly?
The only reason I think it kind of makes sense that way is just because the booklet comes out and then that's where you get your timelines from. But it's fine either way. It really doesn't matter, but you get the annual booklet from the Wisconsin and then they have the timelines on there.
Thank you. Quick question. What is the reason that the administration is recommending that number 9 be deleted? And number 9 says students who are excluded from school attendance under this provision will be readmitted to school after one of the following conditions are satisfied, and then it lists them.
It's in the first one, not the Rule 1, but it would be the first one. The 453.2.
Okay, it seems like there's a lot of information in 1 through 3. Are you saying it's condensed in 453.2 with that last
Yes.
2 sentences?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, is there a motion to move forward to the full board, policy 453.2 for consideration and to retire policy 453.2, rule 1?
So moved.
Second, is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that motion passes unanimously and brings us to our final policy group for the evening. Up front, are there any objections of collapsing rules 1 and 2 into policy 453.3, communicable diseases? And what I would recommend with what is currently 453.3 rule 2 is that we use the header in the title, so put pandemic preparedness as the header and then roll into those 3 paragraphs. Are there any objections to that?
No.
All right, hearing none, we'll take it as it currently appears in the separate rules to see if we have,
I'm sorry, I did have one question.
yes.
I just want to make sure I got it right. You said you're going to roll the headers to the topics for 453?
So we will end up with 453.3 and then retire rule 1 and 2. But the last one is a little different. So communicable disease pandemic preparedness, the overarching title is going to remain the same of communicable diseases. So what is currently in rule 2 would appear under the header of pandemic preparedness. Are you okay with that?
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. All right, so looking at what is currently, let me go back. 453.3, Board Member Schneider, do you have any questions or edits?
I have none.
Okay, I would actually recommend that we omit that last paragraph because it's covered in 453.3 Rule 1, which is going to be rolled into this policy. Does anyone object to that?
No.
Which one you omitting?
The final paragraph on 453.3, it's actually, that process is covered in 453.3 Rule 1, and since they're being combined, it would become redundant. You good with that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So that brings us to policy 453.3 Rule 1. Board Member Schneider, any questions or edits?
I have none.
Okay. Couple quick questions. So looking at that first page under A, educational and preventative measures, number 2, the Director of Health Services, in collaboration with the school nurse, shall ensure that a communicable disease chart, as defined by the Wisconsin Department of Health Services, is available in the health office. So is there just one chart in one health office, or will that chart be provided in all, like, health or nurse offices in each of our buildings?
I'm sorry, where are you at?
I am on what is currently 453.3 Rule 1, A, number 2. Is there literally just one chart for the district, or is there one chart in each of our health offices?
There's one chart in each of our health offices.
Okay. So I would like to change that is available in each health office. All right, and then if we move to the second page, D, exclusion from school, number 4, before making a determination that a student should be sent home after diagnosis and treatment or excused from school attendance, the student and or student's parent/guardian shall be informed of the reason for the contemplated action. So my question for that is, if a parent or guardian cannot immediately be reached for pickup, are there any precautions for where and how students should wait? For example, designated spaces or wearing a mask, or is there anything that the administration feels that we should outline? And again, this is a student that has already been deemed for exclusion because of a communicable disease, and the determination has been made that they should go home. But if no one is available to be reached, I mean, I guess usually, and correct me if I'm wrong, student will wait in the nurse's office or in the main office, or does the administration feel that we need to put any precautions around students that there's a delay in pickup?
It's kind of hard because we don't want to, make the student feel, isolated and/or we're thinking about their care as well in that situation. So,
Absolutely,
Yeah.
but if
but
you're having the student go home because of a communicable disease, are there any precautions that are, and there may be things that are already put in place, but just not outlined in policy, but in the absence of that, I just wanted to ask the questions.
it's a good question. I hadn't thought about it from that perspective.
We do have things in our first aid protocol that's signed off by our medical advisor each year, and I think we should follow that because the severity could be different in different situations, and I wouldn't want to have it in policy that we're supposed to do one thing because there have been times where we can't get a hold of someone, and it's been to a point where we've had to call an ambulance because it's that much of a medical emergency that we wouldn't wait, and nor would we isolate them, and not necessarily for a communicable disease, but just a cumulative of symptoms, like even a fever of like 104, like that's a situation where we would not want a student just sitting somewhere in
Waiting,
isolation
right.
because it could lead to other things like seizures or something like that.
Perfect. As long as those are in protocols that are signed off on by the medical advisor, I just wanted to make sure that it was addressed, and it sounds like it is. My only other concern is in E, as in Edward, readmission number 2, students who dispute and I guess it should really be parents or guardians unless the student is an adult. So parents, guardians, or adult students would be my recommendation for number 2, who dispute the determination or action of the school district concerning exclusion may appeal such determination or action by bringing a complaint to the administration according to district policy. Now, here's my concern. The district complaint policy in extremes could take about 3 months to complete. So do we want them following our complaint process? And if we just look at excerpts from policy 411, and I'm starting at number 4, the request to review, and this is the complaint policy, must be filed within 30 calendar days. So that's already a month. The superintendent or the designee makes their designation. The findings and disposition will be reviewed within 15 calendar days. Now we're at 45. And then if the request must be filed, if you dispute that, with 10 calendar days. And then at the end, if the board gets involved, the board's final decision will be delivered to both parties within 90 days. So my point is, if they are disputing exclusion due to a communicable disease and they follow the traditional complaint process, which covers everything that's not a sexual harassment complaint, that could take months. Is that a realistic expectation, or would we like to have a separate timeline for parents, guardians, or adult students who dispute this determination?
I think administration can put something, in this situation specifically, due to the fact that there must be an illness that they disagree with what we decide to do, those could be handled much faster than, 90 days. So we can say within 30 days. That'll bring it back to at least the first half of a complaint process.
And maybe
Or-
there's
or-
some,
yeah.
maybe there's something, if I'm excluded, Mrs. Babilius, I'm gonna put you on the spot. You're the expert here. What communicable disease could have me excluded from school or school functions?
Measles, varicella.
Perfect. I have measles. How long does it take, and I get every individual is different, on average, how long does it take measles to clear?
You know what, let me pull up our wall chart because it says it on there specifically. Around 21 days.
Okay. So I'll be clear and ready to come back in 21 days. but it could take me, but we're telling people, if you object to this, it's gonna take you 30 days to even get, you know what I mean? I don't know if that, and I'm not saying there's something wrong with that timeline for complaints. I just don't know if that's the appropriate way for someone to dispute this, because really it doesn't give them any option to dispute it.
So I guess, let's just say they are out for 21 days and they had to be out for 21 days with a medical excuse to come back. That gave us the right to possibly have them out. They didn't like it, but the the excuse probably will give us our response to them even, like you had it and therefore you needed to stay out.
I mean, if they had a communicable disease that they actually couldn't be out, like measles or varicella or something like that, like they'd be like mandated by the health department. So I'm not sure how.
So here's my concern. Then we shouldn't give people an option in policy to dispute it. You know what I mean? Because if it's in policy, we need to honor it. And this is not a realistic thing. Say you have to be out of school for 3 weeks. And if you want to contest that, it's going to take you at least a month to do it.
Right.
That just is unreasonable. So I guess my next question is, are there any legal concerns around not giving people the option to contest their exclusion due to a communicable disease? Because if the answer to that question is yes, you have to give them a pathway to contest it, then we need to revisit what we're telling them, because we're taking away their option to contest it, but we're listing it as if it's a real thing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I can consult legal on that part, because the way I'm reading it is that you had to have something in order for us to have you out.
And further, I don't want anyone who has a communicable disease in school spreading that. Not that anyone asked, but just so we're clear. But then I think we should remove the option to contest it in policy. Because if you say, oh, you can contest it, and this is the way you can test it, but that's not realistic because the time frames don't line up, then I'm just not comfortable with that being in policy. So Dr. Garrison, if you don't mind checking with legal, because it might be, if someone is deemed to be excluded because of a communicable disease, then you can't contest that, and we just remove it from policy. So that's track A. Track B is, if legal says, no, you have to give them the right to contest it, then we have to craft what that looks like, because the current method we're referring them to, the timelines don't match up. All right. So that would actually put on hold the 453.3 series. All right. Thank you, everyone. That brings us to the end of our, Ms. Shope, could you put that as the note, so when it comes back, we all know why it came back? Thank you. We are at number 3, meeting closing. Thank you to the students who stayed to the end. That is awesome. Shout out to both of you. Our next policy meeting will be held on Wednesday, February 7th at 5:30 in this same room. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone.